Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. Life of Pi. By Yann Martel. The novel tells the narrative of Yann Martel, a young guy who goes by the name Pi, and an author who is motivated to tell his story, which he has been informed is remarkable. Pi is a creative polytheist whose father owns a zoo, where he spends most of his time. The father of little Pi chooses to move his family from India to Canada, along with a few of the creatures from his zoo. The ship Pi is on goes down in the middle of the ocean, and he and 4 other creatures are the only ones that make it to safety. Pi is left alone on the small boat with just a mature Bengal tiger when the animals, including an injured zebra, orangutan, and hyena, kill each other. When the tiger first attacks him, Pi is terrified, but he soon learns how to use the ship's emergency supplies to keep it at bay. After 227 days at sea, Pi and the tiger finally make landfall on a Mexican beach. Bystanders rush Pi to the hospital while the tiger escapes. Asked about his incredible story by marine authorities, Pi recounts how he and 3 others survived for months on a boat with little food or water and eventually resorting to cannibalism. As the author implies, the reader is the one who must decide which story is true. Notes from the author appear at the beginning of the book. While in India, the author claims to be a novelist who was told a fantastic story that he might use in his work. He is currently residing in India while working on a book about Portugal while trying to overcome the failure of his most recent novel. It's a narrative so unbelievable that it'll make you believe in God, Francis tells the author, and Francis adds he can put him in touch with a man named Pi Patel. Patel agrees, and the author travels to Canada to meet with him. On hearing Patel's story in person, he went on to explain how it inspired him to create the work he did. He shows Patel a lot of affection and shows his love for him. Pi opens chapter 1 by describing his state of mind as sad and dismal because of his ordeal. When asked about his personal experiences, he says he was a student of religion and zoology, but does not go into detail. He claims to be working and living in Canada, but he misses his native nation of India and a man named Richard Parker. In the beginning of chapter 2, the author's point of view is used to describe Pi. He's a small, thin man, no taller than 5 feet 5 inches. Dark hair and dark eyes are a match made in heaven. At the temples, the hair is beginning to gray. Age limit is 40 years old nonetheless. A coffee-colored skin and expressive face are also mentioned by the narrator. During the 3rd chapter, the story shifts back to Pi's youth in India. According to Pi, his mother and father couldn't swim, so they decided to call him Pi. A family friend, Francis, taught him to swim. The Piscine Milliter in Paris, France, was the pool he was named for. Pi was tormented mercilessly as a child for having the name Piscine, which sounded like the word pissing, in it. After that, he wished to be known only as Pi. Pi's fascination with animals began at his father's zoo, the Pondicherry Zoo, where he grew up. The zoo, on the other hand, has since been closed. A man named Satish Kumar is Pi's favorite teacher from childhood and he recalls the teachers he had. Pi's first encounter was with Mr. Kumar, an atheist. With Mr. Kumar, he sensed a strong spiritual kinship. While Pi doesn't mind atheists in general, it's those who are riddled with doubt and indecision that he finds repugnant. A memory of his father feeding a live goat in front of him and his brother, in order to teach them about the risks of being around wild animals, begins to surface in Pi's mind. Animals, he explains, are territorial, but they also respect each other's territories. When kept in a zoo, wild animals rarely try to escape. When they do, it's usually because they believe another animal has infringed on their area. A positive interaction between ourselves and animals is in the best interest of both parties. Once more, the author assumes control of the narrative and catalogues the religious iconography that can be seen throughout Pi's home. In addition to the Bible, Pi maintains a book of poetry on his nightstand. It was when he was 14 that he found a Catholic church and decided to enter, even though he had been raised in Hinduism. Pi became a Christian after hearing the tale of the Bible from Father Martin. After encountering a baker who reminded Pi of Mr. Kumar, Pi converted to Islam a year later. When a priest, pandit, and imam came up to Pi one day, they were shocked to learn that he wasn't a practicing member of any of their respective faiths. Men said this was unacceptable and urged he choose between their respective religions, which he refused. Pi is adamant that all he wants is to love God. Pi's father chose to relocate the family to Canada in the 1970s when living in India became too difficult for him. He arranged to take some of the zoo's animals with him when he and his family left on their voyage. In Pi's telling, his mother was apprehensive about the prospect of leaving everything she had ever known behind, but he was ecstatic. Pi's wife Meena and their 2 children, Nikhil and Disha, startled the author when he discovered that Pi was married. Mr. Kumar, Pi's instructor, was introduced to the Muslim baker by Pi. Zebras were shown to the group at the zoo by Pi. When they saw this strange animal, they were amazed. When an animal in captivity begins to regard another animal or even a human as a member of its own species, this is known as zoomorphism. They realize it's a lie, yet they go along with it because they want to keep their own sense of security, he claims. Part 2 opens with us traveling to Canada by boat with Pi's family. When Pi hears what sounds like an explosion while he is sound asleep, he wakes up. In an attempt to get his brother Ravi to wake up so they may go investigate the sounds, he wakes him up, but Ravi refuses. As Pi makes his way to the top of the ship's mast, he notices that it is sagging and rapidly filling with water. Despite his best efforts, when he returns to the stairs to his parents' cabin, it's already submerged. 3 members of the group with Pi in a life jacket and throw him overboard to save his life. At the same time, a zebra climbs onto the boat and causes it to fall into the water as well. Shipwrecked according to Pi, this is the case. Mysterious metallic burps could be heard in the distance. Things appeared and then vanished from the surface as a matter of fact. When Pi is left alone on a lifeboat, he sees a Bengal tiger called Richard Parker in the water and yells at the animal, who then runs away in terror. Richard Parker rushes onto the lifeboat with Pi in an attempt to save himself. Pi is frightened by this, so he dives back into the water to avoid getting too close to such a hazardous creature. When a shark swims by Pi, he climbs onto an oar that is dangling over the side of the ship and begins to eat it. For as long as it takes, the ship will continue to sink until it disappears. Pi is the only survivor. Pi returns to the lifeboat after realizing he must do so. Since Pi can only see the zebra, he makes the assumption that Richard Parker is tucked down behind the tarp that covers the boat on one side. If you look closely at the zebra, you may see that it has a terribly fractured leg. By now the boat has been invaded by an ambush of hyenas, and Pi deduces from this that the tiger had jumped off at some time, because else it would have dispatched the ambush's prey by this point. The hyena is also a phobia for Pi, but he determines that it is preferable to the tiger. Orangutan orange juice, formerly a popular attraction at his father's zoo, is seen floating above the water in another raft. She joins him on the lifeboat, and Pi thinks she's in a state of confusion. It's the first night on board that bothers Pi the most, but he's convinced that word of the ship's sinking has spread. He wakes up to find the hyena having eaten the zebra's fractured limb, which it had bitten off. Zebra is still alive, but it's in a precarious state. It occurs to Pi that orange juice, like him, has been searching for his family the same way she's been searching for hers. Shock and disbelief take hold of him. The hyena attacks and eats the zebra as it bleeds to death. Sharks begin to gather around the boat as blood falls into the ocean. Pi is afraid they will cause damage to the hull and cause the ship to sink. As a result, they will soon be swimming away. The rest of the day, Pi must listen to the hyena consume the zebra. The hyena may attack orange juice as well, and he wonders if she can fight it off herself. Orange juice is soon attacked and eaten by the hyena. The tiger, Richard Parker, emerges from the tarp and kills the hyena shortly after this. After then, Richard Parker, the tiger, emerges from the tarp and kills the hyena. This is the moment at which Pi informs the author that the tiger was given the name Richard Parker due to an honest mistake made during the transaction, when the tiger's name was mistakenly mixed up with the guy selling him. Due to the fact that he was found with his mother by a watering hole, Richard Parker was originally known as Thirsty. Pi has come to the realization that if he wants to live, he needs to find some clean water to drink. Under the tarp, he discovers a box of emergency supplies. There are 31 ration packages in the locker as well. As a result, Pi decides to put some distance between himself and the tiger so that he and Richard Parker can make it to safety in their lifeboat. A life buoy is attached to the boat, and he begins constructing a raft out of a set of oars and life jackets. When Pi finally makes it to the raft, he learns that he is now stranded in the middle of an unending ocean, dodging sharks. He believes that by simply waiting for Richard Parker to become dehydrated, he will be able to outlive him, but he recalls that tigers can drink seawater without any negative consequences. Richard Parker may be able to survive him because he has access to the entire ocean to drink from. The tiger produces a growl that Pi understands is a sound that his type make when they have no evil intentions as Pi is thinking about Richard Parker. Pi makes the snap decision to make an attempt to subdue Richard Parker. A whistle from one of the life jackets is used to demonstrate his authority over the tiger. Pi returns to the lifeboat after only a short while because he is so hungry and thirsty. He discovers a survival booklet that instructs him on how to catch fish and a few solar stills that can change salt water into fresh water. He drapes a blanket over the raft to shield it from the sun. For the first time in Pi's life, he has to kill fish to feed himself, but he succeeds, and in the process feeds Richard Parker too. Richard Parker gets a bucketful of water from Pi's solar stills. Finally, he comes to terms with the fact that it has been a whole 7 days since the ship sank. On top of Pi, we learned from Pi's narration that he spent 227 days at sea aboard the lifeboat with Richard Parker. By ignoring the concept of time, Pi was able to maintain his sanity. He spent his days writing, praying, and resting, as well as completing boat maintenance and caring for Richard Parker. The continual moisture caused his garments to fall apart, and he had boils as a result. He becomes an expert fisherman and even manages to catch sea turtles. He also used a turtle shell shield to train the tiger. An enormous dorado leaps onto the boat one day, and Pi is able to catch it with his hands. After seeing the fish, Richard Parker attempts to eat it, but Pi stares him down until the tiger backs away. Pi then awards the capture with the tiger portion. Pi and Richard Parker are forced to seek shelter under a tarp as a fierce storm approaches the boat. At times, the ship is buffeted by waves that are the size of mountains for an entire night and day. Upon waking from the storm, Pi discovers that the raft he had been using to avoid Richard Parker has been destroyed, and the lifeboat itself has sustained considerable damage. Using the whistle that Pi used to train Richard Parker, Pi begins mending the tarp and draining the boat's water. Several days later, a massive tanker ship looms on the horizon and Pi is confident that he will be saved. A little lifeboat is nearly knocked over by a tanker that fails to notice it. In the midst of the debris, Pi's boat finds a transparent glass bottle, and it's in this bottle that Pi discovers a message he wants to deliver. His condition is rapidly deteriorating. He grows blind and begins to sleep most of the day. As he spirals more into a state of hallucination, he begins to believe that the voice he's hearing is that of Richard Parker. Eventually, he comes to learn that the voice is actually that of another castaway from a different ship. Richard Parker senses the man's plan and strikes and kills him before he can reach Pi's boat and cannibalize him. Soon after crying and washing his eyes with water, Pi's vision returns. The lifeboat eventually comes across a little island that is completely covered with algae. After coming to a complete halt on the island, Richard Parker and Pi ate the local flora and drank the island's clear water to heal themselves. The lifeboat eventually comes across a little island that is completely covered with algae. On the island, Richard Parker and Pi rest and recuperate from their wounds by eating fresh vegetation and drinking the island's water. Pi spends some time on the island, but soon notices that it has some shortcomings. There are dead fish in every fresh pond, and when Pi finds a fruit tree, he discovers that each fruit has a human tooth in the center. While waiting for Richard Parker to join the lifeboat, Pi concludes that the island is a carnivorous one. Eventually, the boat reaches the coast of a beach in Mexico. Richard Parker takes off into the forest while Pi sleeps on the sand. In the wake of the death of his friend, the tiger, Pi is heartbroken and regrets that he wasn't able to say farewell. Pi is found by a stranger and taken to the hospital, where he is nursed back to health. 2 Japanese maritime officers fly to Mexico to interview Pi about the sinking of a ship that originated in their country. Part 3 of this interview features the complete text of what was spoken. As Pi recounts his travels, the men are intrigued but skeptical. In response to the men's claim that Richard Parker hasn't been located in the city, Pi argues that even in developed regions, wild animals are excellent at concealing. Once Pi tells them he wants to know what truly occurred, they believe him when he claims to be on the lifeboat with his mother, the ship's cook, and a sailor in order to satisfy their curiosity. That the sailor had a broken leg, that the chef turned to cannibalism and killed both the sailor and his mother. In the end, Pi had to kill the cook in order to stop him. All 4 of Pi's original characters, the zebra with a broken leg, the hyena, the orangutan, and the tiger, are now depicted as human beings. He then asks the men, after he's finished, which story they enjoyed the most. They start asking additional questions about the second floor, but Pi has no idea why the ship sank and is unable to assist them in any way. This was a much better narrative, according to both men. Years later, one of the guys informs the author of Pi's tiger story in a report he delivers to him. Piscine Meliter Patel is the novel's protagonist and key character. The book's main narrator, Piscine, or Pi, is a young man. When Pi relates the story, It's in the context of interludes when he tells the story to himself as an old man and tells it to the author of the book. There is a deliberate uncertainty about whether the story is true or not because of this storytelling strategy. Pi is a shy, imaginative adolescent who feels that a well-told tale is more compelling than the truth. First, Pi gives them the incredible account of his time on a boat with Richard Parker, but then he presents an alternate version that is more factual but less fascinating and evocative when he is questioned by Japanese maritime officials. Ultimately, the reader and the officials must decide whether tale is the truth. A coming-of-age structure is depicted in the novel's narrative structure and the habit of hopping back and forth in time. It's not until the ship collapses that Pi realizes how much he relies on his family for care, but he soon finds himself surrounded by wild animals in the most dramatic way possible. The author clearly intends this to be a metaphor for growing up and becoming an adult. When faced with adversity, Pi must learn to be self-sufficient and rise to the occasion. As he tends to Richard Parker's needs and feeds him, he develops a parental bond with him. Richard Parker, the 450-pound Royal Bengal tiger that happens to share a boat with Pi for the bulk of the book. Richard Parker was kidnapped by a watering hole when he was a young cub, and has spent his entire life there. Through the course of the story, Richard Parker behaves in a manner consistent with a typical tiger, which distinguishes him from previous fictional animal companions. This raises the stakes of the story and gives it a more realistic feel. The reader is urged to accept the possibility that a young man and a tiger could coexist peacefully in a small lifeboat and possibly develop a mutually beneficial friendship. However, Richard Parker's time in prison has made his response to Pi and his training simpler, yet he still acts like a wild animal when murdering the hyena and another castaway for food. Ashore in Mexico, after saying his goodbyes to Pi with a humane farewell, Richard Parker takes off into the jungle. Pi, on the other hand, regrets that he was unable to say his final goodbyes. The author, the secondary narrator of the story, a Canadian living in India who travels back to Canada to hear Pi's story. The author is a mysterious figure who plays a crucial role in the story, as he is the one who first hears Pi's incredible tale of survival and decides to share it with the world. The author is both the narrator of the story and a character in the story itself, and he does it in a variety of ways. Toward the end of the story, he considers Pi to be a friend of his. Francis Adirabissimi, the elderly man whom the writer meets in a coffee house in India. According to Francis, the writer of Pi should meet the man in Canada, where he advises him to meet. For the first time in this novel, the religious element is introduced by Francis, who says that Pi's story will make him believe in God. He is also a family friend of Pi's and the inspiration for the name of the man who first teaches Pi to swim when he is a toddler. On the 25th of June, 1963, Yann Martel was born in Salamanca, Spain to a French mother and a Spanish father. Martel, whose parents were in the military, grew up moving around the world a lot. He graduated from secondary school in Ontario, Canada, and then went on to Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario, to earn an undergraduate degree in philosophy. In the years that followed, Martel held a variety of odd jobs before his first short story was accepted and published in the Malahat Review in 1988. He won the Journey Prize in 1991 and the Pushcart Prize for his short stories, which were published in the review in the early 1990s, 1992. Martel's short stories were published in a limited edition, handcrafted volume in 1993 by a bookstore where he had performed readings. In 1996, Martel published Self, his first novel. It is a story about a writer who wakes up one day to find that he is now a woman. Although it was on the short list for the Canada First Novel Award, the book gained little attention. Martel and Alice Coopers started dating in 2002 and have been together since. On the morning of September 11, 2001, Yann Martel's Life of Pi, his second book, was released. In contrast to his first novel, this one was a huge success. More than 10 million copies have now been sold around the world, including the Man Booker Prize, the New York Times bestseller list, and other newspapers' best-selling lists. Since then, Martel has established himself as a major literary personality and is now a visiting scholar at the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. Beatrice and Virgil was published by Martel in 2010 as an allegory of the Holocaust. Until 2015, Martel served on the Board of Governors of the Saskatoon Public Library as a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. Once again, his book The High Mountains of Portugal appeared on the New York Times bestseller list in early 2016. Alice Coopers, Martel's wife, and their 4 children currently reside in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.